Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the slightly gruesome but honestly absolutely fascinating biology behind ancient Egyptian mummification. You know, we always hear about the ancient curses and those massive golden sarcophaguses, but the actual science of preserving those bodies, it was a literal biological battleground.
So, let's kick this off with a bit of a provocative question. We all know that old saying, right? Death and taxes are famously inevitable. But what about decomposition? Can human ingenuity actually hit the pause button on the natural process of our bodies breaking down? Because as anyone who's ever seen a mummy knows, the ancient Egyptians went to extraordinary lengths to evade decomposition. But how successful were they really? Let's find out.
All right, Section 1, the biology of decay, cellular breakdown.
To really get this, we kind of have to look at what's happening at the cellular level. When we're alive, our cells are constantly renewing themselves. We have these specialized proteins called enzymes, and their whole job is to decompose old cellular structures so the raw materials can be used to build new ones. But when someone dies, the cells stop renewing. But those enzymes? Yeah, they don't get the memo. They just keep working, effectively eating the body from the inside out. So for the ancient Egyptians, preserving a body meant launching a massive, highly time-sensitive strike against those natural enzymes. Anyone looking to preserve a corpse had to get ahead of the enzymes before the tissues began to rot. It was basically a race against the clock.
Section 2. Dealing with the brain, a race against time.
Okay, because neurons die incredibly quickly. The brain decays first. To ancient mummifiers, it was just a total lost cause. They didn't even try to save it. According to the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, they used this brutal four-step procedure to deal with it. First, hammer a spike into the skull. Second, mash up the brain. Third, flush it all out through the nose. And finally, pour tree resins directly into the empty skull to stop any further decomposition up there. It's intense, for sure, but it was really the only way to stop that rapid decay in the head.
Moving on to Section 3, gutting and salting, preserving the core.
If you think decaying brains are a problem, decaying guts are infinitely worse. The liver, stomach, and intestines are just packed with highly active digestive enzymes and bacteria. The second you die, these things immediately start eating the corpse from the inside. So priests had to surgically extract these abdominal organs and the lungs right away. But they had to work incredibly carefully. They needed to get the lungs out without damaging the heart because to the Egyptians, the heart was the literal seat of the soul. It was treated with extreme care and left safely tucked inside the chest.
So what happens to all those extracted organs? They definitely didn't just throw them away. They carefully placed them into specific jars packed with a naturally occurring salt called natron. And like any salt, natron is fantastic at preventing decay. It kills the bacteria and completely shuts down the body's natural digestive enzymes.
But natron wasn't just everyday table salt. It was a really potent mixture of two specific alkaline salts, soda ash and baking soda.
This specific alkaline combo was a total game changer. Not only are these salts especially deadly to decay-causing bacteria, but from a chemical standpoint, they actually turn fatty membranes into a hard, soapy substance. This fundamental shift is exactly what maintained the structural integrity of the corpse. It's what kept the body's shape intact, instead of just letting it collapse into mush.
Which brings us to Section 4, drying and wrapping, the final stages.
Once the inside was completely gutted and the skin washed to disinfect it, the empty body cavity was stuffed with sacks of even more natron. And then, 35. That is how many days the corpse was laid in a bed of still more natron to preserve its outer flesh. For 35 incredibly long days, this alkaline salt bath just worked to completely suck the fluid right out of the body.
After those 35 days, the salts had essentially formed the flesh into hard brown clumps. It wasn't putrid, but you can imagine it didn't exactly smell great. So to finish the whole thing off, they did this. First, priests poured tree resin over the body to seal it tight. Second, they massaged it with a waxy mixture containing cedar oil to moisturize it. Third, they wrapped it tightly in linen. And finally, the whole shebang was placed in nested coffins or a heavy stone sarcophagus.
Section 5. Ancient Secrets Revealed. The Success of Mummification.
Okay, we have to acknowledge a somewhat grim reality here. A mummy is definitely not an intact human body. Their brains have been mashed up and flushed out, their organs have been salted like salami, and roughly half of their entire body mass has been drained away completely.
But what actually does remain is astonishingly well preserved.
This ancient technological triumph over our biological enzymes means that today's scientists can literally perform modern autopsies on people who died thousands of years ago. They can pinpoint exact causes of death and even isolate ancient DNA samples.
Because of this preservation, we've unlocked some incredible medical data about the ancient world. It turns out ancient Egyptians suffered from very modern-sounding problems. Air pollution was a severe issue, likely from indoor fires they used to bake bread. Cardiovascular disease, meaning heart disease, was remarkably common, and so was tuberculosis. It's just wild how much we can learn about how they lived simply from how well they preserved their dead.
So they were definitely pretty successful at evading decay. But here is the ultimate punchline to their whole quest for immortality. When some of these ancient mummies were transported much later in history, local authorities actually taxed them as literal salted fish, because chemically speaking, with all that natron and drying out, that is essentially how they were preserved.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for today's explainer. If even an immortal mummy ultimately gets subjected to taxes as cargo, did they ever truly escape the natural laws of life? It's kind of brilliant. It shows that while human ingenuity might use a 35-day natron bath to beat decomposition, you really can never truly escape death and taxes. I hope you found this as fascinating as I did. Thanks for joining me, and keep asking questions.